Welcome into another off-season edition of Daily Faceoff Live. We are streaming live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube, and as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk and Frank Seravalli with you. And Frank, the last 24 hours, maybe not a whole, slew of news. It's not like the dam broke open, but we're definitely starting to get some action.
Yeah, it was definitely, the moratorium on news has now expired with the Stanley Cup final being over. And by the way, the Edmonton Oilers kind of at the center of some of that as well.
And that's exactly where we're going to begin today's show. Stephen Ellis is our big segment today, the next wave. He's got his final draft rankings out now because the draft is only 7 days away. But let's start with the story you broke on dailyfaceoff.com yesterday, Frank. The NHL is going to continue in their examination of the Oilers' LTIR relief usage of Evander Kane. Interesting wording there in the headline, but I guess the question is, what's different when it comes to this Kane thing, and why are the Oilers maybe being looked at a little bit closer than the other teams who've done this?
Yeah, I think a fair question, but the truth is we don't know the answer to that. Here's what I can tell you is that we have now gotten to the other end of the Stanley Cup final. The Oilers season is over, and yet this file remains open with the National Hockey League. And that part is definitely a surprise. We know that every year with players coming back from LTIR for the playoffs, the league has a process with which they scrutinize these injuries. They go through medical records, they go through medical opinions, they have something that the player obviously needs to sign off on as well. They're in constant contact and dialogue with these teams leading up to these players returning. And this year, your point is well made that there was a few of them. There was Gabriel Landeskog in Colorado, Max Pacioretty in Toronto, Matthew Tkachuk in Florida, and all of them kind of have their own differences and nuances to it. But the fact that we've gotten to the other end of this playoffs, and yet the Kane file is still open, and the league believes that there may be some parts of this that they need more information on in order to satisfy that the Oilers complied with the CBA, that to me is fascinating. We've never gotten to this point before where this is something that's still being talked about in mid to late June.
Yeah, what's interesting, too, about the Oilers is even if they needed to activate Evander Kane in the last, call it, week of the regular season, they could have, because Matthias Ekholm was eligible to be put on LTIR as well. So they actually could have made the dollars work for the final month, basically, of the regular season, and they didn't. But again, that's a weird part of this investigation to me, is like the Oilers, again, at no point would have ever been over the cap if Kane came back.
There has to be something that at some point, the Oilers would have been over the cap before the Ekholm injury, of course. But then there was a stretch of time where McDavid also missed as well. There has to be something to this that we don't know, that we haven't seen or can't see, that we just don't like, that it's open for a reason, because otherwise the similarity to some other ones is pretty close. And by the way, the Oilers could have spent that money from Jump Street. They could have acted in August and said, hey, we have a pretty good idea that Evander Kane is going to be out for a while. We knew, at the start of last summer that he wasn't going to be ready to start the season. Weren't sure how long. They could have matched the offer sheets. They could have traded for the replacements of Broberg and Holloway. They didn't. They didn't spend that money all season long. Their choice was to try and be in a position where they could accrue cap space. And then even when it came to trading for Trent Frederick on March 4th ahead of the 7th deadline, they still chopped his salary twice and had the Devils and the Bruins retain half, so that even then they still had enough cap space to activate Evander Kane in the regular season if they wanted to. It was only with the Jake Wallman trade that they didn't. So, we'll see where this goes. There may be no punishment. The NHL may do nothing with this, or they may decide to retroactively punish the Oilers. The fact that it's still lingering gives you some idea that there's something that they're looking at.
I don't know if this is an unfair question to ask you, but it's popping up in the chat, and I saw it popping up on social. Is this draft picks? Is this docking them cap space next year? Like, what are we talking about punishment-wise? Is it just a fine to the team?
Could be any of those things.
Yeah. Fair. And another one, too. I see someone in the chat. Just make the salary cap count for the playoffs, too. This is an easy solution. I mean, who knows when we get the new CBA officially announced, Frank, but that's going to be one of the things that's taken care of, right?
Yeah, they're talking about that right now between the NHL and NHLPA and these CBA negotiations. And I think the expectation is that there will be some form of a soft salary cap when it comes to the postseason in that next CBA agreement. But we haven't gotten there yet. We don't know the machinations or the details. All we know is that enough people have been belly aching, whether it's teams or GMs, that would like to see this loophole closed.
Let's keep cruising along to some of the other news that we got yesterday and really in the last 24 hours. A quartet of contract extensions, Frank. And while Matt Duchene is the freshest one coming down earlier this morning, we'll go in more chronological order and I guess start with the Edmonton Oilers. It's an 8-year deal for Trent Frederic, as you reported yesterday, somewhere between $3.5 to $3.9 million.
Yeah, something like that. So north of 3.5, south of 4. The term is what's most interesting. I mean, there's a guy that, yes, he was banged up and dealt with a significant injury. We didn't get to see him at the peak of his powers in the playoffs and still had just 8 goals in 58 games for the Bruins this year, as a lot of players' numbers sagged in Boston. Why commit that kind of cap space to a bottom 6 or that kind of term to a bottom 6 player? What's the upside in it for the Oilers in the long haul? How much surplus value will they find in the first 4 to 5 years of this deal that will make the last 6, 7, and 8 years of this deal really palatable? So the cap obviously is going to be increasing in such a significant way that by year 8, I don't know that we're going to spend much time talking about the Trent Frederic contract on the books, if he's even still a member of the Oilers at that point. But certainly an interesting path to go down for the Oilers, who are looking to try and shrink AAVs as much as possible with new deals coming for Bouchard and Draisaitl kicking in.
I know he was injured, but considering the playoffs he had, considering he only scored 8 goals in 58 games this season, which even prorated to 82 games is a drop in production from his last 2 seasons, it is a little bit confusing. Again, 27 years old. The Oilers obviously believe there's some upside here, but to go 8 years with someone like this, you would have think they would have gotten like a deal on the AAV, and it just doesn't feel like that. Like if he would have signed a 2-year deal at 3.5, I would have been like, okay, like that's probably fair.
Well, I think the projection that we saw from AFP Analytics was something like 3 years times 4.2. So there is a slight discount. I mean, he's hit 40 points twice. He's a mid-teen goal scorer, 14 to 16 goals a year, just south of 14 minutes a night. The more troubling part for me is some of the inconsistency and how much is that related to the injuries. I mean, he's basically played 200 games of his career where he was south of 10 goals a year and maybe like 15 to 20 points. And then he had 2 really good seasons in Boston where he was much higher than that, doubled those numbers, and that's what he's getting paid for.
Ryan Donato cashes in on his career season with the Chicago Blackhawks. Again, this might be the summer of sticker shock a little bit, Frank, from Frederic to Donato to even Fabian Zetterlund, who we'll talk about in a second. But like with the cap going up, we all kind of need to rewire our brains. We are no longer in that flat cap world. And with that being said, I actually kind of like this deal for the Chicago Blackhawks. 4x4 for a guy who proved last year he can get you 30 goals. If you keep playing him with skill, keep playing him on the power play. Listen, I don't know if he gets to 31 again, but I think you're getting a $4 million perennial 20-goal guy.
Look, I think everyone has acknowledged in the signing of this contract, both the Blackhawks and Donato's camp, that this season, 31 goals, 62 points, doubling his previous career high of both goals and points, was one moment in time. That we have enough track record for Ryan Donato now to know in the NHL what you can reasonably expect is something like half that, which is still pretty decent for a guy that you're expecting to play in your bottom 6, but has shown that for a thin Blackhawks team can play up in your lineup if you need him to and can find a way to compete and produce. So it's the best of both worlds for the Blackhawks. They get some term, and for Donato, this is his 5th organization. He finds a home that he likes and enjoys and is comfortable. Maybe that unlocks some more productivity. And for the Hawks, you could either pay Donato and give him $4 million, and they were previously offering $3.75. So by waiting from the deadline until today, he squeezes out an extra $1 million over the term of the deal. Or you could go on the market and maybe pay more and deal with the devil that you don't know. So they decided to go with the familiarity for both sides, Hawks and Donato. And I think that makes sense because as the cap continues to increase, if he's playing 3C for you at $4 million a year, you're not complaining about that. And if in the meantime you need him to pitch in higher in your lineup, that works too.
Last one is Fabian Zetterlund, and I don't think anyone's really going to complain about signing a 25-year-old who's shown in back-to-back seasons he can more or less get you to 20 goals. Like, there's upside here. He's proven it now for a couple of seasons. The number isn't insane, 3 years by 4.275. But the question that comes into the chat, we talked with Brent Wallace last week. It's like, this Senators team probably isn't going to spend to the cap this summer. Does this mean Claude Giroux's days in Ottawa are over?
I don't know if it means that they're over. I don't think it necessarily precludes them from doing that by any stretch of the imagination. But what it is for the Sens is an investment in the present and the future, that they think that this guy certainly has another level to climb to. I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment. He's shown some of that capability, and at 4.275 is a very reasonable bet in both dollars and term. He's already producing at a 4.275 level, just going out and duplicating or replicating that for each of the next 3 seasons, and he's taken care of himself. But if he can find a way, having come over from San Jose at the deadline, that he can do more in Ottawa, then the Sens are going to have some real surplus value.
Let's go to the contract that came down the pipe today. Matt Duchene in Dallas is back. It's a 4-year, $4.5 million deal. And listen, no one's going to complain about paying $4.5 million for a guy who scored 30 goals and was a point-per-game player last season. He's also, it's crazy to remember, he is still on the books and relatively significantly in Nashville from that buyout, which is just mind-blowing. But Frank, Dallas...
He's going to clear $10 million this year in real money, which is
that's awesome. Not
maybe 11 actually.
Yeah. So again, this contract looks fine. Is it maybe a little rich when it comes to term for a 34-year-old? Yeah, maybe. But again, you're getting such a discount, I think, in the first couple of years that it all evens out. Now the question, though, for Dallas shifts to looking forward, because I fire up their Puckpedia, $455,000 in cap space, and there are only 9 forwards on their roster.
Yeah, it's actually less than that. They have $95.3 million on a $95 million, 95.5 cap committed to 18 players. Remember, there's still $1.4 million in dead cap space next year from a buyout. So you've got to get to 21, 22 players. So 4 more roster spots to fill. That means buckle up. There's action coming. And Duchene is a great value for this team. I personally might have gone in a different direction, and it's hard to walk away from 82 points. But if I'm the Dallas Stars, I'm looking at their playoff failures, and I'm thinking that they're just not hard enough. They're not hard enough to play against. And I don't know that Duchene's moving the needle for them in that direction, even though he has been a clutch goal scorer at times in the postseason. So they had a decision to make. They decided to keep Duchene, who was looking for really more than dollars, was looking for more security for him and his family to be able to stay put. And they really liked it there. So I like that portion of it. But now what? They've got avenues and off-ramps here to create space. The biggest and most clear way to do it would be to move on from Ilya Lyubushkin and Matt Dumba in some order. That's a way to clear $5, $6, $7 million in space, depending on how you do it. Are you trading? Are you buying out one of them? How does it work? Short of that, and you've also got to retool the right side of your defense anyway, so that makes sense. But you've got Mason Marchment up front, who is a trade candidate, and then Jason Robertson as well. And I think things have cooled a little bit on the Jason Robertson front. But at 7.75, it's not just what you pay him this season. It's what does the next contract look like for Jason Robertson to pay him, because he only has 1 year left. You've got to decide kind of on that now, because if not, you're going to want to cash in on the value that he has with 1 more year left at that number, where he's already, again, providing surplus value.
Yeah, again, like the value-wise, contract-wise, the Duchene deal makes a ton of sense, but you're bang on in terms of the predicament that Jim Nill and the Dallas Stars are now in. We still got a couple of offseason previews still to knock off here, Frank, and I know the offseason is underway, but it's an interesting team in Washington, obviously taking the big jump to the top of the Eastern Conference, and they're in a pretty good spot here heading into the summer. First off, their LTIR contracts are off the books. Nicholas Backstrom, TJ Oshie, they're no longer going to be dancing in LTIR room. They have like legitimate cap space here. They could accrue next season if they want to. And as you can see with the board on your screen, They got a pick in every round for the first 5 rounds. They have $9.3 million in cap space, and they have 20 players under contract. Like if Brian McClellan and company wanted to get a little aggressive here and make a big splash, they have all the assets to do so.
Well, what's more impressive than that, and it's a great segue to our guy Stephen Ellis with the draft coming up, is that their prospect pool is so deep and loaded that truthfully, I'm not really expecting big things from the Washington Capitals this offseason. Their roster is mostly filled out. They've got some middle 6, bottom 6 forward questions to answer. Their defense is more or less locked in. Their goalies are definitely locked in. So with all those things considered, and yeah, eventually at some point you're going to have to replace some of the goals from Alex Ovechkin as he enters the final year of his contract as well, that they're in a spot where they could be a little bit aggressive and greedy if they wanted to, or do they just stay the course? I think Chris Patrick is probably leaning towards staying the course because this team has so much of an influx of young players coming that just allow that to play itself out. And if you're already a playoff team anyway, then you're probably in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that's fair. Another interesting thing, like looking forward, as you kind of said, Ovi 9.5. They have John Carlson, final year of his deal at $8 million as well. Like you look ahead to next summer, they have north of $40 million in cap space with, again, like 13, 14 guys already on the roster. Like they're in a very, very interesting spot going forward. And yeah, I guess this summer, you do have kind of those two paths you can take. You could get aggressive and say, hey, we were close this year. We have a really good roster. The goaltending sorted out. Let's have a little fun. Let's spend a little bit. Or as you said, do you just stay the course and trust the process a little bit in Washington? Let's keep cruising along and get to that big segment you just teased, Frank. It's the next wave, and it's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, where you can get a custom ring built and delivered in less than 4 weeks through Charm and the Masterpiece program. Find out more about not only that, but the Charm Diamond Flexity card as well by visiting them online at charmdiamondcenters.com. Stephen Ellis, our daily Faceoff prospect analyst, as we're about a week away from his Super Bowl, getting close to the NHL draft in Los Angeles. And Stephen, your final draft rankings are up now at dailyfaceoff.com. So let's start at the top, as I usually like to do. It feels like this group in the top 5 that you have, Schaefer, Misa, Martone, Hagens, and Frundell, that group's kind of stayed relatively constant, if I'm not mistaken. Like, was there any thought to a Denoyer, O'Brien, Martin, anyone getting into that top 5, or was it a pretty easy decision to stick with this core?
It was a pretty easy decision, I'd say. And you got to look at the stats there. Isn't it just kind of funny to see a guy of 22 points as the top prospect? But that's just kind of how it was for Matthew Schaefer this year. The big one actually for me was whether or not I put Porter Martone or James Hagens at number 3. And from talking to scouts at the combine and throughout the year, the thing that a lot of scouts were mentioning was you want to pick guys that you're going to win with. You want to pick these guys who are going to be these big time playoff performers. And as much as I love James Hagens and the way he thinks the game, Porter Martone, I think, might have some of the best hockey sense in this draft, but he's also got such an underrated shot. He can shoot from anywhere, great playmaker, does so many great things there, but he's also, like, when he's mad, he will go out there and try to kill you. And that type of intensity, especially around the net, I love that. So that was the only real major change. I did also swap Frundell and Denoyer, just talking a lot of prospects that considered Frundell to be the toughest player in this draft to play against. And you watch highlights at a lot of points, I understand that. So those are my only 2 really major changes at the top.
Okay, so I love your draft rankings, and the top 120 is absolutely insane. It's such a worthwhile and long read to get these capsules on all these players that goes 4 rounds deep, essentially. But I'm way more interested in what you think is going to happen at a mock draft. So Schaefer, yes, I think we can all agree, consensus number 1. Do you think Misa goes 2?
It would be a mistake if he doesn't, and I do think so. I know the Sharks have a lot of good center prospects. Misa has that ability to play on the wing, but also Will Smith played really well when he was on the wing this year too. So you got to think maybe they'll have to do a bit of budging there. The Sharks would have benefited the most from getting Matthew Schaefer because that's a guy that they really needed in their system. I don't see them moving up one spot to make that happen there. But at the same time, like the Islanders, like there's an argument to take someone like Misa. There's an argument to take someone like Hagens for different reasons. But I think it's going to be Schaefer number 1. It's going to be Misa number 2. Number 3 is where everything gets really interesting.
Okay, so let's continue to play the game then. Who do you think
So
goes 3 to Chicago?
my pick would be my pick would be Porter Martone. That's who I like the most there. But I understand the idea of someone like Anton Frundell, giving them more of this big power forward guy that can maybe be your second line center, but can move to the side on the power play, and he's got the best shot in the draft. So I think that would be a good one there. Those are the two that I would look at. I don't know if they need another smallish centerman like James Hagens. Could they pick someone like Denoyer? Maybe, but I don't know if I love his overall package enough to take him a number 3. So it's either Martone or Frundell for me. My pick would be Martone personally. That's a guy I feel like would mesh really well with Connor Bedard on the top line.
Is Frundell trending towards like a Joel Eriksson-Ek guy? What's his comparison?
Yeah, that's a pretty good comparison, I'd say. Like with him, it's he plays a really strong power forward game, great shot. He's my one thing with him is I think it got exposed a bit at the U18s was just when he's not on his game, when he's not hitting guys, he's not making damage around the net, he can be a little bit too invisible. But I think you're still looking at a guy who can just fire from anywhere, who's just a smart player, battles hard around the net when he's on top of his game. So I like that comparison.
So I've seen Jake O'Brien. You have him at 7, anywhere from like 4 to like 10. Like he's been all over the place, depending on where you look and who you trust. And I only trust one guy, and that's Stephen Ellis. But why do you have O'Brien at 7, and what has been the conversation around O'Brien's game?
I think with me, you look at he put up 98 points this year, and he had one of the best shooters in the OHL, and Nick Lardis, to work with, which I think really helped. I don't know if O'Brien's going to be this big offensive threat in the NHL compared to some of the other guys on this list. He's the one thing about him, I know this is going to be kind of like he wants the puck on his stick at all times. Like that's a guy that can rush into the zone and no one's going to take the puck off of him. It's whether or not he can make the pass to the right player. That's the question, but he more often does that than not. I just don't know if he's dynamic enough. Like we've seen him go one-on-one with some guys and his play can be a bit too predictable and some defensemen can kind of figure that out. But I will say that when you're looking at like the ceiling versus the floor of a player, this is a guy that I feel like has a really good floor. Like I think you're still going to be getting minimum 50 points from him. I think he's going to be able to be at worst a second line center in the NHL, and he's going to be able to play with a variety of players. Like going out and finding a guy like Lardis to play with who can just fire from anywhere, scoring a stupid number of goals with the Brantford Bulldogs. Like Lardis benefited from that, I'd say, more than Jake O'Brien did, because I don't think Lardis gets over 60 goals if it wasn't for the playmaking of Jake O'Brien. I just don't know if I love him as much in situations where he doesn't have a skilled shooter to work with, or when he's got to be the one that's got to be the creative guy around the net.
Who's going to be the big surprise? Beckett Seneca was the guy last year that everyone's like, oh, you're in the building and everyone just, their jaws are on the floor. Who's going to, either rising or falling, who's going to be the guy that everyone's jaws are on the floor in LA next Thursday?
I think it's going to be Brady Martin. And if you've been watching this show for a while, I've been really kind of pushing Brady Martin for a long time. And it's a name that's creeped into the topic of maybe number 4 at Utah. I don't think he's going to be there past number 7. And when you look at what Brady Martin brings to the game, you look at the Sam Bennett, you look at the Matthew Tkachuks, the Brad Marchands, like they're so difficult to play against. And Martin has never been this high-end offensive producer in the OHL, but I don't know if Connor McDavid would have gotten a lot of points on the Sioux Greyhounds in a lot of the situations this year. So what Martin was able to do this year, over 70 points, very impressive. Battles so hard. We saw him playing with some quality players at the Under-18 World Championship, and he nearly won the MVP title for that. And he got some MVP love at the Hlinka Gretzky when he only had 4 points, but that was because he does so much away from the puck. And when you look at what made Beckett Seneca so good last year, it's not the same. Like Martin's not this towering presence, but in terms of that work ethic and that ability to win shifts, Brady Martin reminds me of him a little bit.
I'm going to throw you quickly because we're going to have you on again next week, so we'll maybe save some stuff for them. But we got an Ask DFO that I'll throw to both of you from Josh. Give me the percentage chance of a trade involving a top 5 pick in this year's draft. Steven, do you think one of those top 5 teams move?
0. And that's not based off of any like real information. It's just like you look historically, it just does not happen. Like Utah and the Islanders are maybe 2 teams that you can argue would have a reason to do so. Like the Islanders found money, try to capitalize on it in other ways. Utah, you've got a really good pipeline. Maybe you're trying to get someone who can get you some immediate help, but historically, we just don't see it happen.
Frank, do you think there's a shot at any one of those top 5 move?
Yes, I think that there's a very real chance. It might not even wait till Thursday, though. I think there's a real chance that one or more of the top 5 picks moves.
Steven Ellis's top 120 up now, dailyfaceoff.com. We threw it in our YouTube chat if people want to go give it a click and give it a read through. Steven, we'll have you on again next week when we get a little bit closer to the draft. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, Frank, couple more Ask DFOs to throw your way. Josh is in and says, okay, what is Nashville doing? Is Barry Trotz on the hot seat? Signing up to take $3 million of Erik Haula, who barely got to double digits in goals last year. That one, I raised an eyebrow at that one.
One of the oldest teams in the NHL gets older. And I get the idea that you're bringing Haula back to a place where he previously played. Understand it. You know the player. He's basically free. Jeremy Hansel is an ECHL player and a 4th-round pick. The fact that the Devils were able to get anything for a guy that was clearly a cast-off from their team is something. We know the Preds are desperate for center help, but I just can't imagine that anyone actually thinks that Erik Haula is it.
I am with you on that. And I guess the flip side is the New Jersey Devils just freed up some money here. Do you think the Devils are going to get aggressive in free agency?
Free agency, I think that remains to be seen. I think you could see them definitely more active on the trade front.
Fair. $14 million in cap space. And I mean, Luke Hughes is really the only big name RFA they need to get done. Handful of UFAs as well. Have you heard anything, Frank? And this is just my own personal Ask DFO on the buyout front. Do you think we could hear some noise in the next couple of days?
I do. I think when the buyout window opens, there's a couple teams ready to pounce. The Dallas Stars with one of those defensemen, I would think it's probably Dumba. Just an easy way to clear up $2.3 million in space without really having to think much about it. And when you don't have any space, getting 2.3 by signing a document is one way to do it.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's keep cruising along to our daily bets brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Frank, I'm going to ask you to play the part of the book because Bet365, they do have odds up for Mitch Marner's next team. If you were handicapping it, who would your top 3 be?
Vegas, LA, and Anaheim.
Vegas, LA, and Anaheim. Now, like I'm Steve Harvey on Family Feud, show me Vegas. Yes, Frank Seravalli. Vegas is the odds-on favorite, plus 200, followed by Carolina, and then Pittsburgh at plus 600.
So LA's okay, 10-1, and crazy. Anaheim's 8.5.
You got 3 of the top 5.
Yeah, but I would say
Pittsburgh's weird.
I can't speak in any definitive way, but what I would say is that I think Pittsburgh is a very long shot, given that they seem to be, and we talked about this on the DFO rundown today, the only team in the East that's actually ready and willing to get worse.
Yeah.
Worst.
And again, you and Gregor went through all 8 non-playoff teams, and you're right. All of them, to some degree, it's like, okay, they want to get better. They're adding. They're shedding cap space so they can do something in free agency. And Pittsburgh's kind of just sitting there like, ooh, just watching along. Just, hey, you guys do all that. We're good over here. Don't worry about us. They're probably selling off.
But that's the year to do it.
Yeah.
2026 draft is outstanding. If you're going to try and really make your pick good and get a difference maker, that's the path forward. It's not signing Mitch Marner to play with Sidney Crosby. Sign him to an 8-year contract for what? How many is Sid possibly going to play?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. All right, let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. Frank, now imagine you're a Florida Panthers fan. You've finally gotten to sleep after watching your team win their 2nd straight Stanley Cup, and then you get the Ring doorbell notification, and you're like, wait, what is that that's going on? And it's Alexander Barkov. Pat, I think we have the video here that we can run while Frank and I talk about it, but a I'll just call it not sober Alexander Barkov going door to door in his neighborhood with the Stanley Cup and the security camera footage. I just get such a chuckle out of it because he doesn't just ring it once, he's hammering that thing at one point. And you hear him say in the background about 30 seconds in the video, he goes, you asked for this. But Barkov going door to door is pretty funny.
And he's like, hurry up, get to one of his friends, like, get down here. And it's like, dude, it's 5:05 in the morning. Like, even for the early risers, like, I think you're still kind of putzing around your house at that point. So just awesome. Obviously, these guys are really tight with their community. I don't know if you also saw the screenshot of or the photo of fans that threw hats on Sam Reinhart's lawn, neighbors. I mean, it's that's the beauty of the Stanley Cup. It truly is a community asset, and it's something that you can share. The Panthers, by the way, have also damaged the Stanley Cup. The chalice has broken at the top, and it is in need of some repairs as the base has also been bent. And we've seen that before. Thankfully, the keepers of the cup are ready to make repairs, but they believe that it will be back and good as new for the parade this weekend.
There you go. I mean, that's all in good Stanley Cup lore, though, right? Like breaking the Stanley Cup, denting it up, throwing it off the side of a boat or whatever the hell has gone on in the past. That happens.
Yeah, but still, it's rough to see the chalice cracked at the top.
Yeah, that one was a little different. All right, there you go. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow, we're putting Frank to work. Trade targets, updated trade targets board coming live on the show. So I'll have that. And I would assume some more news to react to as the offseason is kicking into high gear. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. We'll see you right back here tomorrow, Friday, noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.